We are diving straight into the architectural blueprint behind the most resilient franchise in sports history. If you've ever found yourself wondering how one organization can take devastating hits, completely collapse, and still find their way back to the absolute pinnacle of basketball, well, you're in the right place.
17. Let's just sit with that staggering anomaly for a second. 17 championships. But honestly, it's not even the number itself that's so crazy, it's how they got there. We're talking about banners won across 71 years, in 2 different cities, and spanning 7 entirely distinct dynasties. No other team in American pro sports has done it this many times, in this many different shapes, with so many different core groups of guys.
And this comparison right here perfectly illustrates why the Lakers are just a completely different animal. You look at the Boston Celtics, and a massive chunk of their titles were built on one single 1960s foundation with Bill Russell. Or look at the New York Yankees, who rely heavily on structural financial advantages that are just baked into baseball. But the Lakers, they operate totally differently. They just keep rebuilding brand new, title-winning cores completely from scratch. An era ends, a totally different one begins, and somehow, it's still the exact same franchise holding up the trophy.
So here is our roadmap for this explainer. We'll start by looking at the 17 banner mystery, break down the anatomy of a dynasty, and then apply that framework from Mikan to Showtime, roll through the three-peat and Kobe eras, and finally trace the path from the wilderness straight to the bubble.
All right, part 1, the 17 banner mystery and how they managed to survive every setback.
Moving to part 2, the anatomy of a dynasty. Let's pop the hood and look at the secret formula. Good look, great teams aren't just accidents, right? They aren't just some unpredictable collision of talent. Every sustained title core requires these 5 structural ingredients. You absolutely need a star to be the primary engine, an anchor to act as a second star, a coach to translate the vision, a system for everyone to run, and a window of time where players' primes actually overlap. And all of this is held together by 3 vital forces, having the raw talent, the timing of those overlapping primes, and, this is key, a productive tension that actually pushes the team higher rather than just tearing them apart.
Now notice the absolutely crucial distinction here between a solo star and an anchor. The solo star is the gravity well, right? They're the player hoarding the regular season MVPs. But the anchor is the reason a team's ceiling actually becomes a championship rather than just, a frustrating conference finals exit. Solo stars get you noticed on the highlights. A star plus an anchor, that gets you a parade.
So the fascinating thing is that just as you can watch a dynasty forming, you can literally see it dying. When any of these 3 end-of-era signals flash, an aging star who just can't carry the primary scoring load anymore, a system that opponents have finally figured out, or public front office tension bleeding into the press, you can basically predict the exact moment a dynasty is about to collapse.
Part 3, from Mikan to Showtime. Let's actually apply this blueprint to the real world.
Looking at their very first era in Minneapolis, check out the symmetry here. This perfectly maps out how the 1950s team built a 6-season window around George Mikan's slow post-up game, using Jim Pollard as his anchor. Fast forward a few decades, and the 1980s rebuilt the exact same structural blueprint, using Magic Johnson's unbelievable speed, Kareem as the anchor, and Pat Riley's fast-break transition system. The style of basketball on the floor completely flipped, but the underlying architectural components, exactly the same. But it wasn't always smooth sailing. Between those eras, the blueprint was agonizingly incomplete. Despite having an absolute powerhouse star in Jerry West and an incredible anchor in Elgin Baylor, the 1960s window was just repeatedly slammed shut. Why? Because Bill Russell's Boston Celtics were an insurmountable wall. The Lakers reached 6 NBA Finals in 8 years and lost every single one to Boston. They had the core component, sure, but the window simply did not exist as long as Russell was in the league.
Let's jump to the 1980s and watch how this builds back up. You get rookie Magic Johnson famously stepping in to play center in the 1980 Finals, which kicks off an incredible 5-championship window. Pat Riley takes the coaching reins, and in '85, they finally vanquish the ghosts of the 60s by beating the Celtics. But remember those end-of-era signals we just talked about? This massive dynasty only closes when Magic's tragic HIV diagnosis fires a sudden, aggressively accelerated, star ages out signal, abruptly ending Showtime in 1991.
Part 4, the three-peat and Kobe, an absolute masterclass in team building.
After Showtime died, the Lakers leaned right into their immense geographic and financial advantages to assemble arguably the most physically dominant duo in modern basketball history. The front office executed a masterclass in pattern recognition. In the exact same month in 1996, they traded for Shaquille O'Neal and drafted a teenager named Kobe Bryant.
Then they brought in Phil Jackson and his famous triangle offense. Bam! They hit all 5 components perfectly, creating a massive 3-title window. And later on, when Kobe needed his own anchor, they just repeated the exact same formula with Pau Gasol, running in the same system for 2 more rings.
But we can't forget our rule about tension from earlier in the explainer. What started as productive friction between Kobe and Shaq eventually morphed into incredibly destructive public warfare. Shaq famously delayed toe surgery all summer, uttering this legendary quote, "I got hurt on company time, I'll heal on company time." And Kobe? He interpreted that as a complete and utter lack of championship focus.
Which brings us right to the 2004 Finals loss to the Detroit Pistons. This series proves the blueprint works in reverse. All 3 end-of-era signals fired simultaneously. Shaq was aging and clearly losing a step. The Pistons' defense brilliantly solved the triangle system, and the public feuding between Shaq, Kobe, and Phil Jackson became totally toxic. The dynasty died right on schedule, leading directly to Shaq being shipped off to Miami.
After that, Kobe proved he was the ultimate solo star, dropping a historic 81 points in a single game in 2006. That's the 2nd highest scoring performance in NBA history. Yet despite that individual brilliance, the team suffered back-to-back first-round playoff exits. Why? Because the blueprint was missing a massive piece. Kobe lacked an anchor. A star alone can score 81 points, sure, but they absolutely cannot win a 7-game series by themselves.
Part 5. Wilderness to the bubble. Let's look at the franchise's darkest era.
So Kobe eventually gets his anchor in Pau Gasol for 2 more rings, but a devastating torn Achilles in 2013 sent the franchise plunging into a total systems failure. The tragic death of legendary owner Jerry Buss sparked a really destructive sibling rivalry between Jeanie and Jim Buss. This front office paralysis led to 5 brutal years of terrible draft picks where they were hunting for raw talent instead of fit. And it culminated in an unmistakable Signal 3 moment. Magic Johnson, who was team president at the time, shockingly resigning on live television without even giving Jeanie a heads up. The blueprint was quite literally in ashes.
However, the franchise's geographic gravity and that relentless pattern recognition paid off yet again. To fix a shattered young core with absolutely no direction, what did they do? They leaned right back on the blueprint. LeBron James signs as a free agent in 2018, providing the star. Shortly after, they traded away that entire young core to New Orleans for Anthony Davis, immediately securing their anchor.
Navigating the profoundly devastating helicopter crash that took Kobe Bryant's life in early 2020, this newly assembled roster rallied in the unprecedented pandemic bubble. They had LeBron as the star, AD as the anchor, Frank Vogel stepping in as coach, and a highly elite defensive system. For a brief, highly emotional window, all 5 components aligned perfectly.
And this 2020 championship is the ultimate proof of the blueprint's power. By assembling those 5 structural components, the franchise survived the darkest wilderness in its history to hoist their 17th championship. After 71 years, 2 cities, and 7 distinct eras, they once again tie the Boston Celtics for the most banners in basketball history.
The anatomy of this dynasty proves something pretty profound. While every golden era inevitably ends, the structure itself can always be rebuilt. The signals will flash, the windows will close, but the blueprint remains. Which leaves us with one final, thrilling question to ponder. Knowing exactly what it takes, what superstars will inevitably assemble next to chase banner number 18?